Can you believe it's already closing weekend at Saratoga? Barry Spears joins me to talk about the late pick five sequence for Saturday, August the 31st, Labor Day weekend. Barry, buddy, it just flies through. It's already a short meet, these summer meetings. And then, unfortunately, with Saratoga, you have a couple of the weekends where some of the big races get rained out, and you have a couple of the days where you don't really feel like you get that day of racing. And then, boom, it's almost over.
Yeah, man, it's so crazy. I was so much looking forward to this meet in general because I was going up there again. I'd already done that. I mean, it's just flown by, and it's the beginning couple weeks, with the rain was a little shaky, but after that, I mean, the last couple weeks have been great.
And it was kind of funny the way we came into Saratoga because there was such a high coming into Saratoga off of the Belmont Festival.
Oh
How
yeah.
cool that was, and the energy out there, and what a big day that was, and everybody talking about how positive the experience was. And then when we got back to Saratoga, right off the bat, at the beginning of the meet, it was like rain pretty bad, and they got stuck making some tough decisions some days. And but we saw a really good day of racing last week on the Travers. And that was one of those days where you look back, it's like, I missed connecting in a few spots here or there, but there were good races, big names, big stars showed up, and it seemed like everyone came out of the race. I don't remember hearing about all that much of horses getting pulled up or that type of negative thing, which is always the most important. So from a gambling standpoint, it was good. Health and safety, it seemed pretty solid from all that I can remember. That was what Saratoga was like, that big day on the Travers last week.
Yeah, that was like the quintessential, big Travers day that we're accustomed to getting, in mid-August, and every race was really exciting. There was some really good performances. Torpedo Anna, basically ran her way into the hearts of America,
Yep.
and Fierceness showed up, and it was just a great day of racing. It wasn't like there wasn't any prices or anything. It didn't chalk out. So,
No.
you know, all in all, it was a great day of racing for everyone involved.
So Saratoga finishes up this weekend. This is a really big Saturday because you have Pacific Classic Day at Del Mar, and they're going to have a really good undercard. I think 11 races total. You and I are recording this on Wednesday afternoon, so Del Mar actually hasn't even finished the drawing of their complete card. It's not been put out yet. And then Kentucky Towns opens up. They have a few
Tomorrow.
races on Saturday. Yeah, they open up on Thursday, and then their Saturday card, they have a race that is like a $1.5
A
million
$2 million
race.
race.
But if you're a Kentucky bred and if you're a certain type of horse, it's actually a $3 million race. One of them is worth 3.1 million. So they have some insane purses, and the fields are just really competitive.
Always.
The late pick five was very, very good. I think Angela Herman's going to join me to take a look at that Saturday late pick five from Kentucky. Then I'm going to go through the Del Mar card. So we'll have a bunch of stuff out there for you. Saratoga, Del Mar, and Kentucky Downs coming up this week. I'm going to head down to Del Mar myself and do a little work for DRF. I'll be posting some stuff for pictures and videos and stuff for social media. So hopefully getting some good shots of some winner circle photos and some paddock pre-race stuff. But Barry, we have some business, my friend. It is our final look at Saratoga together this meet. So let's go out with a bang with this Saratoga late pick five. I do want to remind everybody, it's also the last Fun in the Sun handicapping tournament. Now, this prize pool is not been updated yet, so it's a lot more than that right now. It'll be more this weekend. But remember, you can go register still this weekend. This is the August 24th graphic from last week, the new graphic they usually send me on Thursday. So that'll have everything all updated. But keep in mind, last five Saratoga, first five Del Mar, it only costs $125 to enter. So it's really affordable. And if you finish in the top five, you'll qualify for Monday, closing day in that final table. So you can win some money. You can also win a spot in a bigger tournament on Monday where you get to play on closing day at Saratoga with also some big racing at Del Mar. There's three graded stakes races in the sequence that we're going to talk about, but the ninth race kicks it off with a mile and a 16th first level allowance race for 3-year-olds and up. And thought a pretty competitive group, Barry. Just kind of looking at some of the horses that'll take money. Yeah, the 3 Rambling Wreck, I think we'll get some support in here. Barrage wouldn't shock me to see that one get some support also. Sambaru is another one, I think, towards the outside. But one of these races where you're not going to have an overwhelming favorite, I don't think, in here. You have some horses who are sort of solid at the level, but a lot of question marks in here. Most of these horses and these connections probably had a little, like, had some higher hopes for some of these horses. They are not win machines, but they're kind of good fits at this allowance level. Where do you start? Who are some of the horses you're looking at here?
Yeah, this is a really kind of evenly matched sort of race.
Yep, good way to
You
put it.
got horses coming from all different directions, different surfaces, all that kind of stuff. But essentially, when it's all said and done, they're really closely matched, I think. And that being said, I tend to not liking favorites in these kind of spots
Yeah, when
for
you can
that
make a
reason.
case for some of the bigger prices, right?
Exactly, and there's a couple of horses here I wanted to gravitate towards. Um, First off, number 6, Barrage. I think this horse is really competitive in this spot, has some versatility to him, can be on the lead, can sit back a little bit.
Yep,
I think in this race, it'll probably be better if this horse sits off the pace,
I agree.
because I think the speed is going to be coming from the outside. The 8, the 9, the 10 should all be kind of gunning it for the lead and trying to sort themselves out, leaving the 6 in a really, really good spot ahead of everybody else because there are some deep closers in here. And I think this horse can get first run and give a good account of himself in this race.
At the end of last year, right? That his November 23rd race in a similar spot at this level, runner up that day. That 89 buyer speed figure would go a lot way against this group. That's just competitive. He's come back. He's run a couple races this year. He's shown a little more speed this year. But I agree with you. I think getting him to take off the pace a little bit would be perfect. The Barnes had a really nice Saratoga meeting. So it looks like they've been priming a lot of horses for this meet, and they've been firing.
Yeah. Yep. And I expect this one to give a good account of himself uh, on Saturday. The other horse I'm gonna mention is I'm gonna mention this horse because this race isn't all that overwhelming with
No, it's competitive, but it's nobody scares you.
right. And I'm gonna say the one McCullough has a good shot in here just based off the kind of trip this horse will probably get. Now you see Fly right next to this horse, the 2, and then all that speed from the outside. I think this one might get a nice trip based on that and just follow the 2 right out of the gate and be in a good position, all covered up coming around. Chad Brown does very well with these kind of runners in spots like this, kind of stepping up into allowance company for the first time, and I think this one has some improvement on the horizon. So I want to include that one in there too.
One horse that I want to mention, because it is this kind of a race that you're talking about. First glance, I kind of passed this horse over and I wouldn't come back to him. But then I get back, I look at O Captain a little bit. He's a horse who's had a kind of interesting career when you go through it, because he wins his debut going 5.5 furlongs at Gulfstream Park. And then he's off to January the next year. He shows back up. They put him in a stakes race. He runs third. And then he gets tossed into the Fountain of Youth, the Florida Derby. Actually doesn't run all that poorly in those races,
No, I ran
really,
pretty good.
for just coming, like, not having a lot of foundation. Those were his 2 first route races. He's in the Pat Day Mile, Gulfstream Park Mile. Then he gets some class relief. And you see, he kind of fits a lot better at this level. He's more of an allowance horse. They've only put him on the grass a few times, and he kind of had a little bit of sneaky trouble. I think the April 27th race just completely eliminate that one. The 2 down at Gulfstream Park too, and remember, this is at the good part of Gulfstream Park when these races are really tough and they're deep, and he's only beaten a length, and he's only beaten 2 length in those races, and he finishes 6th and 5th, so it might look a little bit worse, but both of them he had legitimate trouble. I'm just not scared of anyone in this race. I'm going to use a few. He's one of them. You mentioned the 6, absolutely. Barrage is going to be in the mix for me. The 5's kind of in okay form right now. His last 3 races are sort of solid. That first level allowance race at Churchill, when he runs second, he's only beaten a neck. And then he gets a win against Softer here. There's really nobody that scares you in this race.
No, not at all. And a horse like Old Captain is real interesting in the spot because this horse has the ability to win a race like this, but
Yep.
hasn't shown it.
Yep.
And honestly, it's a tricky read because he kind of runs slower a little bit um, going to the turf than he normally is, and I think he's formidable in this spot. He just has to get the right trip.
Kind of trip. He
And
hooked that horse that too from down there, KC Chief,
mhm.
who's I think won 4 in a row, basically gate to wire with buyers in like the 87 to 92 range. It's like a pretty solid horse there. Yeah, like he fits at the level. He just sort of needs the right trip. He's just kind of he's an in and out horse. He's not a horse you trust. So you want 10 to 1, right? That's the fair type of
Yeah,
price on a horse
yeah,
like this. You don't want to
yeah.
take probably shorter than 8 to 1 ish, but he's one of many that would really not shock at all. I mean, Victor's Valiant. If you just eliminate his race off the turf last time out,
Right. He fits
his 2 and
perfect.
3 starts back are not bad. He's just not a win machine, right? He's in the money in most of his turf starts. He just doesn't win a whole lot. So, yeah, a lot of ways you can go in a challenging race because Sambaru will take money and he's fine. He's just been at the level for 4
Ever.
races in a row, and they've
And
been okay. They're okay races. Um, yeah, Laurel Valley probably just showing a little speed at the outside, as you pointed out, but a difficult, competitive race in the pick 5 sequence to kick things off in race number 9. Now we get 3 straight graded stakes races, Barry races 10, 11, and 12. This one will be dominated by a heavy favorite on the morning line as far as the conversation is concerned. So we should start the talking with the number 7, 2 Sharp. Previewed this race with David Aragona for daily racing forum on the YouTube channel. And when talking about this horse, I think what's kind of fascinating is these are the types of horses that we usually try to take shots against who have the big figures early on in their career, because it's hard to see if she can take a step forward off of that 98 buyer speed figure that she ran less than a month ago. The counter to that would be there's not that much speed in this race, and she's pretty quick. I mean, a few others, Carmelina and maybe one other. And if you're just saying, I'm going to toss her, I'm going to try to beat her, there aren't that many really logical or intriguing horses. You have a horse like Brightwork who's coming off of a long layoff, and she had an incident when she was coming back to make her return to the races. So she had to scratch and end up pointing to this one instead. Maybe a horse like the 3, I thought was probably the most logical horse if you're trying to go against the favorite, just like a solid New York bred who has some foundation. So how did you see this race with 2 Sharp coming off that 98 buyer speed figure?
yeah, I tend to think negatively of those kind of performances
Me
when
too.
horses do this early in their career, especially like first or second start like this one. Um, I mean, obviously they were just way better than the competition that day. Too Sharp was. I don't know if this horse can kind of pair that up. I mean, it's difficult in general, let alone a horse that's only had 2 starts as a 3-year-old to be able to pair that number up. It's going to be very difficult. That being said, um, if you think about this race from a buyer perspective, that it would probably take an 85 or higher to win this race, right? In that range. Um, there's a lot of horses in this race that can jump up to that and still and win
And
this race.
be more competitive. So if you're
Yes,
see, the key is you can't when you're playing that game, you're not trying to look at 2 Sharp with the 98. You're playing her as if she's going to come
it's
down
gonna
if you're trying to
regress.
beat her,
Correct.
right? So
Yes.
you're not looking like, oh no, someone's going to have to run 100 to beat her, because if she runs back to the 98 or 100, she's going to win.
Right. She's gonna win regardless,
So it
and
doesn't matter.
nobody's gonna touch her. So,
Yeah.
and she'll be very very small price.
So if that's your approach, that's how you have to think of it. I could only find like 1 or 2 that I really
I got
like.
2. I got
Okay.
2.
Okay.
Bright Work is definitely one of them. That horse has the class. And
The barn's been just rolling too.
yes,
Look what they've done at Saratoga so
the
far in their
barn's
limited
been
starts.
exceptional for this whole meet. Brightwork draws very, very well in here. I like that draw to be able to see the inside speed and kind of clock those horses. Brightwork, I think, has a big shot, and I think that 9-2 is a little bit ambitious. I really think they're going to be closer in the wagering. Too Sharp and Brightwork are going to be a lot closer than 7-5 and 9-2. I would think
Just because
more
maybe we
like
know her. She was, she won her first 4 starts last year. She was 2 for 2 at Saratoga. She's a grade 1 winner and a multiple graded stakes winner. And she does sort of just look like a horse who, yeah, they tried to go longer and she just didn't want to. And now she
right.
gets to come back to the sprints.
Right. I would say the 2 would probably be at post time more like 9-5, 5-2 ish. But yeah, you definitely want to tread lightly though with a horse like Brightwork, because you don't want to take too short of a price on a horse like this, because there are some question marks. The horse obviously hasn't been out since November 3rd of last year. So there's some things that are kind of creating some doubt here with Brightwork. He's not
She
a
was supposed
solid
to
horse, but definitely somebody that you can think would upset the apple cart here.
She was supposed to run in the test a couple weeks ago. She kind of reared up in the paddock.
Hmm.
And when that happens, they have to scratch the horse when you sort of get off your feet. So they scratched her then. She had to reroute to this race. So she would have showed up a few weeks ago. This is the next sprint race for the division. So she ends up here, and she's a really talented filly. It's just a lot to ask off of that long of a layoff, right?
Yeah, that's the question, and of course you don't want to take too short of a price on a horse like this
Yep.
because of the long layoff, and the 2 last races weren't all that great at all. So, there's much to be desired there.
Because we
The
think for sure that it seems when you look at the form like it was just going longer, but then there are cases with horses like this that are really precocious too, right? Where
right,
they're
where
just really
horses
good
just
early and then
mhm.
they don't ever kind of get back to where they were their first few races when they were just ahead of everybody.
Right, yeah. And that's why you need to demand a price here on Brightwork. You don't want to go too short on that one.
Yeah.
The other horse that kind of caught my attention was the 2 Autumn Evening. Um, I really like this horse off the bench on July 4th. Although in that race, kind of was just the comment in the forum says a step slow, and I think that's a little bit generous considering it was I thought a little bit slower than just a step.
Yeah, she had no
And
shot after the
yeah,
start of the race. It was a
yeah,
field of 4. She missed the break. The 3 in front of her were all more tactical. And this was a good group. Emery is 4 for 6. She just came back after that. She was second in the test behind Ways and Means. She had a 93 buyer in there. Mystic Lake won a graded stakes before that race and after that race. She won the Miss Preakness, and then she went on and won the Charlestown Oaks with a 95 buyer speed figure just last weekend. Helena's Forte, who was third, she came back and won an off the turf stakes at Saratoga with an 87 buyer speed figure. So those 3
right.
horses that finished in front of her came back and ran first, and second in really good spots.
Right. I mean, considering what you see in the past performances and in the running company lines of everybody else in this race, that's probably the best you're going to get here.
And that race is
Um,
a lot tougher than this race. Now, that doesn't mean
yes.
she's going to win this race with a running style or anything like that, but that means she faced foes who would be very logical and
Very,
live in here.
very, yes, very live in this spot. Emery is definitely a horse to be reckoned with. I do see somebody in here. I think it's the 4 that ran against Ways and Means last time, and Emery both, but that one doesn't look that great. Yeah, it's
Yep.
the 4 Bell's Bluebell. Just kind of off form and in and out, inconsistent.
She doesn't
Don't
like the
like that
off
one at all.
tracks at all.
Right.
You can see whenever there's an off track, she just is nowhere to be found. And she's okay in other spots, but you look at Mystic Lake, who handled her in the Miss Preakness. Class wise, she just feels a little like a cut below than
Right.
some of
And
the
Autumn
best.
Evening wasn't that far off of Mystic Lake.
No, she
So I think there's some improvement in there. And like I said before, it's going to take a mid 80 buyer probably to win this. And there's no, Autumn Evening does have some upside here.
Well, the reason I was pointing out the field is because look, that buyer for that race might be light. Because look at what all 3 of these horses in front of her
Right.
did in their
They
next spot.
came back.
They
Yeah.
all came back with way faster figures. So I think She's a little interesting. I think I put her in third or fourth. I definitely had her as one of the horses in here. Initially, I passed over Tricky Temper, and then kind of going through the rest of the field. So she has 4 wins. They've all come against New York breds. But when you look at her 3 races against Open Company, she ran second in a stakes race behind Jody's Pride. Then she went long on the turf. We can just eliminate that race. She had never tried the grass again. And then she missed the break on July the 19th that day. So the 3 races she ran on the grass, one of them, she had a legit excuse the other, and then she ran second against Open Company. And now in her last few against softer groups, against the New York breds, she's done what I would hope she would. She got a couple nice wins. She showed she can sit off the pace a little bit. She is foundation, kind of the opposite of the 7. You get a little bit more of a proven horse when you're trying to beat a horse that's more of a wild card, like Too Sharp, who you don't know if she's going to be able to get back to that. You feel a little bit more confident about Tricky Temper. Now, my concern is
price,
and also she really likes Saratoga, so they're trying to get another race for her. Look at how many times. This is going to be her 4th race at Saratoga, this meet. So in just over a month, she's going to run 4 times.
Right.
Does she have a little, like every 2 weeks, she's basically ran July 19th to August 2nd, August 2nd to August 16th, August 16th back again.
This is one of those horses like in the 90s and early 2000s that you could probably sneak in there and get a price on a horse in the spot like this.
Yep.
You can't sneak these kind by anymore.
No.
And I think Tricky Temper is going to take a lot of action. And that's my only reservation with kind of gravitating toward a horse like this.
If you're trying to beat the favorite, you would want a little bit more of a price.
Yes, exactly.
With others.
I think this one's going to take some action, and it's a tough race, especially if you're trying to beat the favorite here, Two Step.
Yeah, the one we didn't really mention. I wasn't sure what to do with I think we had Mucia is what Pete Aiello was going with. I think we and David joked that we both said it different ways too, and we were laughing about it. She's got the nice speed figure 2 starts back. That one kind of is a little bit of an outlier though for her. The others were a lot slower, and
it was a perfect trip. I mean, I wrote those performances off, both those wins for Mucia as perfect trip wins.
And now she gets the rail.
Yeah, this is not going to be a good trip. Irad's going to have to pull one out of his hat to win this race, but I've seen him do better with worse.
Oh yeah, and but you'll probably get some of that Irad money too, right? So she won't most likely be a good enough price for me with the rail draw, and just having to prove it outside of Gulfstream Park too for her first start outside of Gulfstream. I felt like there were some knocks on her in here, and she's 8-1 on the morning line.
Yeah, I mean, I would demand a price. I mean, she is working well coming into this race too, and getting top riders. So that's gotta create some sort of, a little buzz about this horse to see what's going to happen. But like you said, I have a feeling this one's going to get bet down too low.
Let's go to the Grade 1 Spinway. We get to see some 2-year-olds in big races this weekend. These are the 2-year-old fillies going 7 furlongs on the main track at Saratoga. You'll have to the outside, Quiet Side, as one of many who have been impressive in their limited careers. I mean, Quiet Side earned an 80 Beyer speed figure winning at Saratoga. We just talked about how nice of a meet it's been for John Ortiz. He has another horse drawn to the outside that's very live in here. The Queen's MG, one of those horses who wins at 45-1 in the career debut, then just has like a bad debacle of a trip in the Astoria, and everyone just kind of forgot about her going into the Schuylerville, and she won at 44-1. When do you see horses win and pay $90 twice in their career in the first 2 wins like that? Never. And then she says, you know what? You don't give me any respect. I'll come back and win the Adirondack and just crush in that one. Pondering was pretty impressive for Brendan Walsh in the debut there. Those are a few of the top contenders, but I thought this was a pretty challenging race, and especially with the lightly raced horses, because sometimes the speed figures can be a little bit deceiving. You'll get horses who have an 80 versus maybe a low 60s or 50 of a horse who just ran a little earlier in the meet. So sometimes they're a little harder to get a real gauge on with horses who just have less races. You have less of a sample size. Who are some of the horses you like in here, buddy?
Yeah, this is a doozy of a race. I mean, having this many horses in a race this early in their careers, it's very exciting as far as what we might be able to see next year on the Derby Trail and the Oaks
Yeah,
Trail and things of that sort. So this is very encouraging. There was 3 horses that I kind of zeroed in on. I'll go to the first one, the 10 Bellicosi. Um, I know this horse was in a state bred maiden and kind of ran off, but I thought the performance was quite impressive. Um, and I think this horse doesn't really need the lead either. I think he's just plain flat out. She was just better than the competition that day. Um, but speed figure wise matches up pretty well with this
sure.
group. One thing I will comment on though is Manny Frankel rode that horse that day on the 17th of July and ends up on the 1 here,
Yeah,
Immersive. I know he does ride quite a bit for Brad Cox, but it's sort of strange when you see a horse that wins by that many lengths come into a stake race and have the jump ship.
yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that's all that much of a negative
No,
based
because like you
on
said, if it's Cox, it's probably just a lot of the barn thing,
right. It's
right?
it's
Just
it's the setting up for future
yep,
mounts.
business.
Um,
Yep.
but I will say I do kind of like Immersive in this spot too. Um, and I think people will shy away from this horse because the barn A is cold and B they drew the rail. And I don't necessarily think that that's always a bad thing, especially in this spot against this competition. Drew next to a horse that is just going to flat out walk out of the gate in Sherbini. Um, and I think that puts Immersive in a nice position to kind of pick his spot as to where he wants to be. I know the barn hasn't been all that great at this meet, but they can turn it around in a heartbeat. He has the horse flesh to do that sort of thing and catch fire really quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if Immersive kind of does his thing or does her thing in that race. Pondering is the other one. I thought
Yeah,
that race was really really good
me
and
too.
should set this horse up for a nice run. The Queen's MG is obviously you have to respect off those 2 wins. Um,
I
but
think this field is where she faces just some better horses
yeah,
than.
and how many times can she put those kind of efforts together? I mean, she
Yep.
paired up 73 buyer numbers, which aren't that great. She was just better than the competition. I think this is, like you said, the litmus test for her. But I think there's a lot more to offer in this race than the others.
Yep. Pondering, I like quite a bit too. She had a slow start, then she kind of rushed up 3 deep, and she challenged for the lead early. It was a good effort. And what I like too, looked at her half sib. Her dam was solid. The half sib actually just won Think Big with an 86 buyer speed figure in the second start. So actually showed second start improvement also, and got a nice speed figure. So if was a horse that was able to do something like this,
Yeah, just do that
right?
at,
That
like
type of
8 to 1, and
improvement,
we're good.
right? Yeah, that would be really solid. I think she fits very well. I thought the 6 Salted, another one that you look at when she raced, and her figures are a little lower than some of the horses who raced just a couple of weeks after her, but she was behind Immersive. And in her debut, what I like is Salted was right close to the front end and was pushing the pace early. And then in the Immersive race, this race, Immersive's the 7, Salted is the 6. And Salted just completely misses the break here and is just way out of it. So, like the difference between Salted and where Immersive is, who's sitting third, and that's obviously the difference between winning and finishing second. So, I like the fact that after that, she didn't just sulk. She closed a bunch. She finished second that day. And we know she's got more speed than that because she showed it in her career debut. So I thought she was interesting too. It's a challenging race where I didn't feel like you just have to go with the 8 or the 10 or the 11, and neither do you. I think we have you muted, Barry.
Yeah, you know, those two favorites are going to be lukewarm in a race like this. This is probably going to be one of the better betting races on the card.
Yep.
11 is caught out wide. I mean, it's quite possible she just gets caught wide the whole way, and not
She
getting
was,
an opportunity to run well.
yeah, she was good. She was in between horses, right with the leaders. She had to back off and sit third. Like her debut was a professional looking win. Because she was in between horses where sometimes you get steadied back and then you can't come on again. But she just backed up nicely and then she was able to angle around. So no knocks on that. It's just now she's in a tough field. She's going to be hooked wide. You have a lot of other really talented horses in here and some intriguing horses that could offer you 4 or 5 times the value that she does. I mean, if I'm playing a pick 4, pick 5, Sherbini is one of the horses who I am at least throwing in tries because I like horses in these races, Barry, that we know pass horses. Because a lot of these races with young horses, a lot of them want to be forwardly placed. They're all kind of jockeying for a position early. It's always nice when you know that, oh, hey, they've shown us a couple times that they can at least pass horses. So this horse in the try, at least, and if you're spreading out a little bit, Mark Cassie's had an awesome meet.
Yeah, he's really turning on. His 2-year-olds are hitting at a furious rate. I mean, his 2-year-olds have been outstanding this year.
And you know
I
what? Shout
wouldn't
out to
count him
Dave
out.
Grenning because he wrote in the article, the preview article of the Saratoga meet, about that exactly how Cassie felt like he's coming with a stronger hand this year, especially with his 2-year-olds. And if you were just taking note of that and reading that note, and then every time Cassie had a horse that you looked at and that was maybe you gave a second look to, you probably threw a few more of these horses in at really nice prices.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is definitely a key leg in this pick 5 because you could get a nice price here and really set yourself up for a good score.
Yeah, and a lot of options if you're playing in that contest in the Fun in the Sun. Like in this race,
Absolutely.
there's a lot of horses that are going to be between 6 and 10 or 12 to 1 that you feel pretty good about. Many that we had mentioned. So, strong competitive group in race number 11, the Spinway. Let's get to the third of the 3 graded stakes races on the card. This one is the Grade 2 Flower Bowl. Shout out to Warlike Goddess. Won this race in 2021, was second in 2022, and has been in the Breeders' Cup, Filly and Mare Turf back in 2021, was in the Turf in 2022 and 2023. And I think they're going to look to get to the Filly and Mare Turf this year, just kind of using this race and maybe another as a prep, but getting back with the Fillies and Mares here. And if you look at her form this year, Barry, it makes sense. She probably wasn't quite as sharp off the bench. Then she stepped forward in her second start. She can get right back up to where her best races are, somewhere in the low 100 buyer speed figures, up to about a 105 where she peaked last year. You wonder as these horses get a little bit older, are they as sharp now at 7? But mainly with her, the knocks on her are always just she's not fast early. So when she
No.
gets in races where there's not a lot of early speed, she's just in a bit of trouble because she doesn't make her own trip.
Yeah, she puts herself up against a lot of obstacles by being very, very slow early. Personally, I am kind of eager to get a chance to bet against her at a short price.
Well, because there's
Um,
no speed in this race at
None,
all.
absolutely none, and
Because,
I think she's lost a step too. I
yeah,
mean,
that
if you
wouldn't be
saw her
shocking at all.
race in her race in the New York Handicap up at Saratoga, she was just not really into it, kind of closed a little bit, but just didn't really get her best run. But I don't think she has it in her anymore. I mean,
She went
I'd
over and
love to
faced
see
a
her
softer group at
right
Delaware last
to
time
win.
out.
Yeah,
You get a
look at
little
who she
confidence
faced.
builder.
Chop Chop. I mean,
But
Chop Chop wouldn't be a factor in a race like this.
so this is the Timeform US pace projector. No speed. That's what it says.
None.
And David was kind of explaining this to me earlier today and saying that instead of like sometimes you'll see favors front runners or slow pace, but
Mhm.
this is actually different because what this is trying to explain is that these aren't even horses that have speed. They just might end up on the lead because there's nobody else in here.
Right,
It's
they're
not
just
even like a front runner in a race where there's one front runner. There's no front runners,
well,
but it
it's funny you say that because I do think that some of these horses, or at least one or two of them,
have to
are
go.
really gonna try to get to the front, and I think the 2 is well intentioned for that. La Mejana. Um, I just believe that Louis Sai is the intention of even having him ride this horse is to get this horse to the engine.
She
Um,
stumbled badly at the start last time out. She was
Last
in the
time
race.
didn't have it, and this horse tends to do that. I mean, if you see back in March at Gulfstream, did sort of the same thing, got checked early, and had a rough run of it. Another horse that might end up trying to get good position early is the 3 Parnack.
He
Has a
won this
win,
last year on the front
right,
end.
going wire to wire in the same race last year. I think, drawing the 3 hole is probably best for that sort of trip, especially when Warlike Goddess is on the rail. Um, Parnack could be one that's forwardly placed, as is Eternal Hope. Kind of does the same sort of thing, can be forwardly placed as well. I think those
She ran
horses,
her
uh,
race last time
yeah,
out was exactly like you would expect for a horse coming off the bench. She didn't race since October.
yeah,
And
she needed it for sure.
she was just fresh. Like you could tell Pratt didn't really he was trying to get her to settle a little bit, but she just wanted to go. She was right
Right.
up on the front end. Like she was putting pressure on the leader. She actually moved to the lead at the top of the lane and opened up a little bit, but she just did it too early and it was off of a long layout. Like she'll get a lot out of that race. And I think the horse that's in here just to kind of be the rabbit is probably the 8 for McCulloch for Brown.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because
Yep.
Idea Generation actually did this last year for McCulloch in the Waya, which was a field of 4 where they went, sub 51 and 1 to the half. They were just crawling. A race that looked kind of like this from an early speed standpoint. There wasn't much. This horse got out front, set it up a little bit so that McCulloch just had a target to run at, and that's probably why she's in here, just to make sure that there is a target and just to get out front. And that helps her chances. But that was the only race where she's ever even been close to competing with a group like this from a speed figure standpoint. And so I just don't know how good she really is overall. She just feels like with her and with Giroux and here, she's here to just get aggressive.
Yeah. It's I mean, that's the only reason why you would see this horse in this race. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what other factor she could offer. I mean, unless they know something we don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but I think this might be a tricky read as far as the pace scenario because, at first glance it looks like it might be slow, like the no speed. But if you look through it again, there's a situation where,
A
the
couple of
2,
these
the
horses
3, the
try.
4 kind of, yeah, kind of heat up. So you got to be careful. Um, but I really don't know what to make of the 9 here. Verviers,
Yeah.
I just don't know what this horse has to offer. I mean, at all.
And
I
what's
mean,
difficult is she's a filly. She's faced the boys in most of her career. Her 2 wins did come when she faced the fillies, like in her first race and then in her most recent race. She's also only, from a distance standpoint, she's only went a mile one time, a mile and a half one time, or this about distance. I don't even know if this is really her best. And she's getting a wide trip, so some question marks for me. Yeah, like I couldn't get a good read on her.
I mean, honestly, if the horse is 10-1 like the morning line, I'm including this horse in every ticket I have. If the horse is 4-1, no thank you.
Horse who I like in here a little bit is the 6 Nishi Marie. So you can see last year she's fine. She's in her only race going a mile and 3/8 going this long. She's in the Jockey Club Oaks Invitational. She runs really well. She finishes second, beaten in neck. She's behind Eternal Hope. She comes back in the Sands Point. She's behind Eternal Hope again. And then this year, she's just a better horse. She just matured. She grew up at 4, and it wasn't like one race. Every one of her races have been better. All 4 of them against good company. You know, she ran down White Beam, and then she came back. Remember, that was the race that it looked like Joel was last at the top of the lane, and he came out of nowhere to get White Beam that day. Comes back and runs really well, out finishes Warlike Goddess in the New York and behind Gidia, who got a perfect trip. And then
what's wild? It's what's crazy wild about this horse. You can almost see it in the past performances how this horse is kind of on the bell curve.
Yep.
You can see that this horse back in last year around this time in June, July, August, the horse was showing a lot of speed. And then you'll see that the horse was coming off the pace for whatever reason. I don't know if it's the connections or if it's the horse, herself maturing or understanding how to run. But you see the last couple of races from in 2024, the horse is gradually getting more speed. And that definitely speaks well to her form.
And just naturally, she's coming out of shorter races than this one. So she could kind of by default just be a little bit closer,
exactly.
A few lengths out of it. I think she fits in this group really well, coming out of the races with Moira and Fev Rover. That was a good race in the Beverly D at Colonial. So I like her in this spot. She's going to be in the mix for me as well. Yeah, we pointed out Eternal Hope fits really, really well in here, coming second start off the bench. McCulloch's one that, I've tried to beat her a few times, and then I kind of look back at her, and I was like, wow, she's a grade 1 winner. She's actually a 6-time graded stakes winner too. She's pretty solid, with especially going a little longer. I think if you eliminate some of the shorter races, you could see that she just wants to be able to just sit back, relax a little bit, not have to really work hard early. And that's where, when she can just kind of go at her own pace at the back of the pack. But she's pretty sharp horse, She likes
I mean, it's funny because, Clever Stables have tons of horses like this, and this is like the horse of a lifetime for
anyone else, right?
The horse has won 1.8 million.
I know.
And we're like super fade in this spot.
Belmont Oaks, grade 1 winner there, and just like always shows up. She's been in the top 3 in 14 of 18. And is proven at Saratoga. Just really hard to knock overall, as we both feel like Warlike Goddess vulnerable in here with that running style, getting a little bit older in a race that has some question marks about the pace scenario, and maybe just about her overall ability at these types of levels. Now we'll see if she can compete. Let's finish off the pick 5 sequence here, Barry. Race 13 on Saturday at Saratoga is an optional 35 claimer. These are horses who have started for a claiming price of 50 or less. Mile and a 16th on the turf course. Some that will take some support in here. The 5 and 6, both kind of interesting horses because there's not that much speed in this race. They can just sort of sit good trips, kick a buck. Comes off of a big win, and Linda Rice, first off the claim, is very, very good. But this is one of those races. You have Palace View to the outside, who has run solid races at the level, but is 0 for 8 at the turf. And you feel like with the presence of Irad, probably a horse that's going to be overbet. Another challenging, competitive race where it doesn't seem like there's going to be a heavy, heavy favorite in here.
Yeah, this is a doozy to end the card. You can go so many directions in here. I did narrow it down to 2 horses that I would want to key on. The first is number 6, Jersh.
Yeah.
I think this horse just
so it kind of feels like you're calling me something, like you're calling me a name, right? You Jersh. Like, well, hey, what did I do, man? What did I do to you? I thought we were boys. What the heck,
Such a Jersh.
I know, man. What?
I think this horse just got his form muddied up a little bit in that June 29th race. It was caught out wide, was way wide really the whole way.
Just never had a shot.
And didn't really get a chance. And now this got back to a decent spot and kind of almost pulled off a big upset and gotten a little bit of trouble. And I think this spot drawing the 6 hole is probably best for this horse, and being forwardly placed is probably a good thing as well. I think this horse rates
I
a
like him
good trip in
a
this
lot too.
spot.
I agree. Because when you look at these horses, what they did, some of them earlier on in their career too, like his races against the maiden special weight horses on the grass, they weren't bad at all. Just like a little bit in too tough. And this is where like the higher level claiming turf horses go as winners in races like this. So this is a perfect spot for him, as he showed. And with the way the race shapes up, he could have a real tactical advantage on a lot of horses in here. He could be sitting in a
Yeah,
perfect trot,
sitting
perfect
right
spot.
behind the speed. Yeah.
Yep.
And another horse that I keyed in on is the 7,
I
Devil's Got a
agree. Same
Cause.
sort of reason.
Yeah, I mean, getting post relief, really. I mean, that last race was a hell of a race for a horse like this. And was caught out wide, kind of hung in there the whole way, like way wide, and now gets a way better post.
And
Should
class
have a
relief with the
right
blinks.
blinkers on, class relief. Louis should have this horse sitting right off of the flanks of the leaders and sitting a great spot.
Both of them have to be on my tickets in pick fours and pick fives. They were probably like my two that I was going to start with also if we were talking about this race. And one other that I made a case for, just coming off of a pretty bad trip last time, was the 8 Our Country, who he's more of a deeper closer. But in this race, he does fit from a class level foundation. This is where his spot is. And he's going to go second start back after that long layoff. I mean, he had a pretty brutal trip last time out where he kind of got stopped and came on again. So he's one I'd throw in my pick fives or pick fours. And I thought I had one more price horse. Oh, one more that I want to mention was down to the inside. So over in Ollie, he debuts. I like when you have horses like this where you can go through everything in his career. So his debut at Ellis Park was on the sloppy track. He just doesn't fire, put a line through it. Then he goes up to Woodbine. And you and I were looking at those races a lot at Woodbine last year. I covered them every day. Those were 3 solid efforts against maiden special weights at Woodbine. He lost to a horse named Aha Moment, who came back and won his next start with an 84 Beyer speed figure. So these were solid races. Then he's off from September to June. He shows back up in June, and he just completely misses the break at Churchill Downs and actually runs into a horse named Rebel Red, who is in very nice form right now. Rebel Red comes out of that race, wins a first level allowance race. I think there's a story in the DRF about this horse. This horse lost an eye, and had run previously, I believe, with both eyes. So we've seen horses run with the one eye before, like Patch and other.
So
horses
he's won
like
a race. Wait, he won a race with both eyes and then won a race with one eye?
Talk about another horse in here for a second. Let me pull this article up because I was just reading through it a second ago and I can get into it a little more. It's kind of a fascinating story because it was one of those things I was like, wow. So DRF article from David Grenning earlier on. DeVoe hoping to end meet in same manner started it. Was talking about how had a really nice start to the meet, and then coming up has some horses like I think Pyrenees was in here. That was, let me see. There's another one too, though. That wasn't even the article because there we go. Rebel Red to make first start since losing an eye. That's the title of the article.
Oh boy.
So this is Rebel Red is actually going to run on Sunday in the Bernard Baruch. So how crazy is that? The horse that's going to run on Sunday.
Shout out to the handicap horses.
Yeah. Making his first start since losing his left eye in a stall accident. There have been some horses who have run well in their careers with just one eye, such as Pollard's Vision, Patch, Unoho. And she said, Cherie DeVoe said, this is a little different because he had run with full vision in both eyes before. So now this is a significant change. He seems to have adapted well on the track. It's not affected him while he's galloping, but this is a race situation. So even though nothing has gotten him stirred up, it's going to be a little different, So
yeah, sure.
I just thought that was fascinating. It's one of those things where you're reading it and it stands out to you because it's like, what? Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's an article you can check out. Rebel Red to make first start since losing eye. Was right along with another article about DeVoe hoping to end the meet in the same manner she started it, with a really nice start for her. But so you're going through over in all these past performances, and you hook a nice horse, Rebel Red, and then you drop in to the spot that makes him eligible for this level, a maiden 40, and he wins. He just kind of sits a nice trip that day. I think he might just be able to sort of do the same thing, just kind of save ground from the inside, sit a good trip. He's going to go third start off the form cycle. This barn has only come with live horses. Dylan Davis has been good all throughout the meet with horses just about this price. And when I'm looking at his form, there are 2 races that I can legitimately eliminate, one on the slop, one when he had a slow start against a really good group and a sharp horse. And then the other 4 races, they make sense to me. So not an easy way to end. And honestly, I thought,
I'll give a shout out to a horse who
please,
I took a real long look at, and I wasn't gonna mention, but I'm gonna. Is Collect from Ike. I think this horse has some speed and shows it's just
every
this
now and
horse is
again.
very this horse is just very inconsistent. But if you get this horse on the lead in a race like this horse could be dangerous.
I know that 2-back race
can win.
is like fine. It's very competitive. It's very competitive with a group like this. This was one of the more challenging pick 5 sequences, I thought, of the meet. Just really competitive because there wasn't that extremely short field with the you know what? Like, I just don't think we can go more than 1 or 2 deep in here with these horses. Even in the prior race where you have the 7, who's going to be a heavy favorite against 8 other rivals, right? So it's not a small field, and this horse is stepping up. It's not like she's been in a bunch of graded stakes races, crushing graded stakes horses. We don't know what her class level really is. So while she's a formidable favorite in the spot, she's a horse who has, some questions. I really did think it was one of the more difficult pick 5s that we've looked at. We looked at most of these Saturday pick 5s throughout the meet.
Yeah. This one's ultra tough because there's no real standouts here. I know there's a couple of horses that are odds on, like 7-5, like Warlike Goddess and Too Sharp, but those horses are very vulnerable and might get beat, both of them, and this could pay some big numbers here.
Barry, my friend, it's been a blast throughout the Saratoga meet. We talked about opening day, and we've been able to talk about a lot of these Saratoga big racing days. And then next week, we will finish up with Del Mar. Del Mar will have closing weekend next weekend. So we'll be able to take a look at some of the races going at Del Mar. Don't forget, there's big action at Kentucky Downs. I know in the next month or so, Woodbine has another couple big days. And then Santa Anita, you and I are recording on the 28th. I believe that's the big day, the California Crown Day that they've now created. They bumped up a couple of the purses really heavy to try to use that as a big Breeders' Cup prep day. And they want to try to, make it like a Pegasus World Cup kind of day too for Santa Anita. So that'll be a big day coming up in just a month. And man, it's crazy because a lot of these horses that are running are getting their final prep in before the Breeders' Cup.
Man, that's right on top of it. We're right on top of it. It's crazy.
We really are. We really are. And that just shows you how things have changed in racing. My friend, before we get out of here, anything you want to mention? Fingers crossed and positive thoughts to Chuck Simon, your partner in crime over there from Going in Circles and Big Mondays. I know he's up at Saratoga on the men right now. He's in the hospital over there. And I saw him post out that if anyone wanted to come by and say hello. So we always want to send our best wishes over to him. And anything else you want to point out here before we get out of here?
Nope. Prayers up for my man Chuck. Got to get him through this. He's definitely thinking positive, and we got to just bring him over the hump with our energy.
Absolutely. And there are times when thoughts and prayers aren't helpful. I can tell you that when you are in a hospital, when you're kind of sick, when you're getting over things and when you're getting through things, there are days where you're not feeling well, where you're really tired, where you're really groggy, and little messages from people do help you a lot. Seeing someone that was a surprise or that you weren't quite expecting does help you a lot. It picks those spirits up. It just reminds you of things. You get some of those endorphins going again that you may not have had. So sometimes when we need actual help with the gun control, I don't want to hear about thoughts and prayers. But when we're talking about someone who's sick, give them those thoughts and prayers, because I can tell you from experience, and so can you. Earlier in the year, it wasn't even that long ago for you, man. When you were, when you got out of nowhere, I like that. I really appreciated anyone that reached out. It helped me a lot.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and I think Chuck is feeling that love too, because he was telling me the other day that he really wasn't, aware that there were so many people that admired him and liked his work and liked him as a person. Until you have something like this happen to you, you don't really know. And I think he's really been, pleasantly surprised by the amount of outreach and positive vibes for, everybody's been bringing to him.
Good to hear. We love hearing that. Shout out to Chuck. Best of luck to you, Chuck, and best of luck to all of you this weekend, closing weekend at Saratoga. Remember that Fun in the Sun handicapping tournament, expressbet.com. Check it out. Last 5 races, Saratoga. First 5 races, Del Mar. And if you qualify, if you're in the top 5 this week, you'll make it to Monday, that final table. Saratoga handicapping store. Past performances, DRF picks, clocker reports, betting strategies. David Aragona helps you out. I think it's David and Mike Beer this weekend on Saturday. They give you bets all throughout the card. They're always looking at value and always trying to help you with exactas, horses to win, pick 4 and pick 5 strategy. So take advantage of that for the last time this meet at Saratoga. Let's crush it, my friend. Let's hit this pick 5 this weekend. Good luck to all of you out there.